Welcome to the 902 podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain John Vik, and I want to thank you for listening. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO, with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 podcast. Back from elk hunting, Sheriff. Welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Yeah. Did you have a good trip?
It was a good trip. Very good.
Super.
Did you get anything?
Yeah, was it successful?
It was elk hunting. It wasn't elk killing. It was elk hunting.
Oh, so that answers that as a
That
no.
answers the question, yes.
Yeah.
Kind of hide and seek kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. Chief Deputy Houchin's here. Thanks for being here, Ben.
Yeah, and I'm so happy he left on election day during all that time too.
Yeah.
At least nothing bad happened. We had it under control, didn't we?
See, I knew
So
that.
far, so good.
I knew nothing bad would happen after election, and it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
Well, we've got special guest in the studio today. One of my favorite people, by the way. I know. And then she went and left to go work for another agency.
sorry.
This is Special Agent Christina with the Department of Homeland Security Investigations.
Yes. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for being here. Chrissy, we'll talk. We brought you on to talk about human trafficking, which is something that you are well versed in investigating today. But before we get to that, we wanted to give our visitors just a little background on who you are, where you're from, and
Sure.
how you got where you're at today.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I've lived here my whole life. Went to Lincoln North Star and then went to Southeast Community College where I obtained my associate's degree in criminal justice. And then I got hired on here at Lancaster County Sheriff's Office from 2012 to 2018. The first 3 years was a patrol, and then the last 3 was in investigations, mostly child sexual assault, child abuse, terroristic threats, domestic violence, of that nature. And then I left.
Yeah.
Then you
Sad.
left. Yeah, you abandoned us.
Yeah.
Dang it.
But I asked for permission, so that's what makes it okay.
It was one of the more polite separations that I remember. It was
Yeah.
like, God darn it.
I didn't think it was going to happen.
Well, she had such a great boss when she was down there in investigations, so I knew it had to be difficult for her.
That was a good pat on the back there.
Yeah, thank you.
So back up a little
Just
bit.
so the listeners know, Ben was her boss back then.
Yeah. Just to back up a little bit, was there something specific that drew you to a career in law enforcement?
For as long as I can remember, I wanted to be in law enforcement. My mom always jokes that I used to run around singing bad boys, like when I was in diapers. So that's pretty much all I've ever wanted to do.
Okay.
Nothing
so
else.
So Cagney and Lacey didn't draw you to it, or
No.
okay?
No.
And so you left and went to join Homeland Security then in, you said
2018, the end of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then that's so now you are you said a very special agent, I think is.
Certainly did not say
No.
that.
Oh, okay. But I was just clarifying her title earlier.
She's
and-
special, let me tell you.
Just
Yes,
a
very
special agent.
But so you're not a federal law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
And so this is your full-time gig. When you started there at Homeland Security, was it specifically for human trafficking that you went there, or really all investigations?
No, it's all investigations. So you go through a 7-month academy. The first 3 months is with the National Training Center, and then the following 3 months, 3.5 months, is with HSI specifically. It's called an add-on,
Okay.
and you learn about all of the authorities that HSI has nationwide and abroad. And then you go back to your home office, which I came right back to Omaha under a direct hire. So I was very lucky.
Yeah.
But one thing HSI is really good at is they really try to put you where you're going to thrive, like what you're interested in.
Right.
And so I actually started in child sexual abuse material cases,
Okay.
child pornography, production of child pornography, and then I kind of just got thrusted into a juvenile sex trafficking case.
So we trained her for that.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And then I was nervous about it, but it was something I'd never done, and it was interesting to me, and
Yeah.
it was like right in my wheelhouse, holding people accountable who hurt children or vulnerable parts of our community. And then that's all I've done since 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here today. Human trafficking is something's talked about a lot. I think a lot of people just in the general public they hear that term and they're like, well, that's bad. Human trafficking's bad. But if they were, to have to put a definition on it, it's one of those things. Well, what is it? So what is human trafficking? What are we really talking about when we're saying that?
I'm going to kind of split it into two parts. When we're talking about human trafficking, and I'm only going to talk mostly today about sex trafficking because that's what I'm most experienced in. But obviously there's sex trafficking and labor trafficking. One is commercial sex and the other is forced labor.
Okay.
But when we're talking about commercial sex or sex trafficking, we're talking about splitting it between adults and juveniles. So when we talk about adults, it's when someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to push somebody or to coerce them into commercial sex. That's one way to think about it. And then with juveniles, what we try to really make everyone understand is that none of those things have to exist. It's just that if you exchange anything of value with a child under the age of 18, federally, under the age of 19 for the state statute, in exchange for commercial sex, that is a crime. And people think, well, that's money. It's not just money. It's drugs. It's a place to stay. It's a ride to or from a place. Any of that is value, and you will see criminals use that to exploit these children who are vulnerable.
So, do you ever get the argument, especially more about adult trafficking, and say, well, how do you distinguish between prostitution and sex trafficking?
It is the voluntariness of it. So if an adult female, mostly adult females, participate in prostitution, although it's illegal, they're doing it on their own free will.
Right.
They're doing it out of their own conscience of what they want to do. When we're talking about trafficking, we're talking about someone is exploiting a vulnerability that they have in exchange for them taking that money from them.
Okay.
So they're forcing them into that sex act with like force, like assaults, coercion, like I will call CPS and have your kids removed. I will call immigration. I will report you to Health and Human Services. That would be like a type of coercion. And then obviously fraud, making them think it's something that it's definitely not. And we see that a lot with like massage parlors or illicit massage parlors that are telling these people they're going to come in and do massages, and then ultimately they're participating in commercial sex.
And it's probably a fine line that you're walking sometimes, because I'm sure the people that are perpetrating these trafficking schemes, that's probably exactly when they want to back out and say, well, no, these people are just doing that on their own, free will.
Every single suspect that I've ever interviewed has told me that.
Yeah.
So it's important for the investigators to have a lot of evidence when we're dealing with traffickers. Personality-wise, they're all very narcissistic. They think a lot of themselves. They're mostly like pretty well educated as far as street smart. And so you have to be able to leverage the evidence against them to kind of get past that. But that's almost always what traffickers or pimps are going to say, is that, well, this is voluntary, or, oh, I was just trying to help this girl out and she wanted to do this. I was just providing security. Those are all common defenses.
Gotcha. Well,
and you throw the BS flag there, right?
Well, I let them lie for a while.
Okay.
But then, yeah, at some point.
So, we're here in Lincoln, Nebraska. Something like this couldn't happen in Nebraska.
Oh, this happens everywhere.
Okay, so where does this happen? Because I think a lot of us get a false sense of security just thinking, well, that's stuff that happens in, big cities on the coast somewhere. It couldn't happen here.
It happens everywhere. It happens in Lincoln and Lancaster County, Omaha, Douglas County. But we also have had cases of human trafficking out in Beaver City.
Yeah, I remember that case and hearing about that.
And it's happening in your community. This is a crime that's been around since the dawn of time. This isn't something that is new.
Yeah.
It's just the way that we're investigating it and the way that we're combating it, we're uncovering it easier. Because of technology.
Yeah.
People talk on their phones, they text, they use social media. So now there's more evidence to try to prove these types of crimes than there were 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, and there's different laws now, too.
100%.
Yeah.
If you even think back 10 years ago, and this is just law enforcement, we're constantly growing and understanding, but 10 years ago, sometimes we were still arresting juveniles for prostitution. And that's just, we learn from our mistakes. And I'm sure in 10 years in my career, I'm going to look back and be like, okay, that was what I did was incorrect, or I didn't have the right information. So that's part of it too, is that we just didn't understand it, and we didn't understand how best to combat it. And sometimes dealing with trafficking victims is a very difficult thing. There's a lot of trauma on board there. There has to be a lot of patience and understanding, taking time to build that rapport. And I don't think we knew how to do that or that we needed to do that to be able to make these cases 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, some of them aren't the easiest victims to work with.
No, they've been taught to distrust police.
Right.
They are obviously a lot of fear on board from their trafficker, whether that's physical or emotional or sexual abuse that's come from their trafficker. And a lot of them are just really embarrassed, and they don't want to admit that they've found themselves in this situation.
So what does not anybody individually, but what is a victim, what can a victim like this look like? I mean,
well, if we're talking a lot about vulnerabilities when we're talking about victims. So we're talking about people that maybe have lower economic status, are homeless, facing substance abuses, mental illness, marginalized communities are affected by this a lot. Anyone can be affected, but when you think about narcissists or traffickers, people that want to abuse others, they look for those vulnerabilities. Are they supported? Do they have a strong support system? Do they have trusted adults in their life? When they see that stuff doesn't exist, that opens them up for vulnerability. And homelessness, especially for juveniles, but adults too, is huge because you're vulnerable to all those things that we just discussed.
And I know sometimes, and we've had to take a look in the mirror at ourselves on this too, because just like you said, for a long time, we really didn't know exactly what we were looking for. We can work a sex assault case, we can work a child neglect case, but when you're looking at the bigger organized scheme behind it, we didn't always know what to look for. And I know that runaways is something else that's also come up when you're talking about a victim profile, because they lose a lot of those support networks that they would otherwise be leaning on, and then they go find a new support network, only to find out that it's really not one that's helping them.
Yes, and I think even when I was working patrol here at Lancaster County, so that was not that long ago, 10 years, when we think about when people would run away, if we found the kid, a lot of times we just took them right back home because that's what we did, that you were supposed to be at home. And we didn't do a necessarily really great job being like, why are you running away? Are you running away from something, or are you running to something? And both of those things can be problematic. And so I think that too is just like looking like, how can we better these situations? And that's definitely one. If we just constantly pick up runaways and take them right back, we're not fixing the situation. And like you said, they're very at risk, because when they're on the run, no support, no money, nowhere to stay, and that makes them very vulnerable to traffickers.
Well, you started that with the domestics on that sheet and asking the questions of, hey, has this happened before? Has he hit you? Does he have guns? Does he threaten to kill your kids? Right. And that changed a lot of how we were working domestic cases.
Yeah, the threat assessment.
Yes.
Yeah, that too. And that's why I love law enforcement, because you're constantly learning. You might feel like you have a really great way of doing something. In 5 years, you're like slapped in the face. You're like, wow, that wasn't great. I could have done better.
Sure.
Had we known,
Had we known. Hindsight's 20/20. And then it's just when you do know, not being stubborn and making the change, which I think Lancaster County has always been really great at.
Who is responsible for investigating human trafficking investigations?
All the state and locals are responsible. There's state statute in Nebraska, a very good state statute for sex trafficking statewide in Nebraska. And then there's 3 federal agencies that are primarily responsible: Homeland Security investigations, where I work, and then the United States Marshals Service helps out, and as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigations. So those are the 3 federal agencies that look into it.
Now, do one of them take a bigger role? Because like the marshals are really big on sex offender registration, and we get grants for those. And working, then they're real specific on those. I know they have arrest powers for the others, but is there any of the agencies that says this is our bread and butter, this is what we want to
Homeland Security investigation. That's our main priority is sex trafficking, commercial sex, especially juveniles. So that's something that we're very passionate about, and that we work really hard, not only here and like nationally, but internationally in countries all over the world.
That raises a great question. I don't know if you saw the movie Sound of Freedom.
I didn't watch it, but I have heard great things.
I thought it was a very, very good movie. But there are those in certain circles that say it minimized or it diminished the real issue of sex trafficking in America, which is people selling themselves for drugs. And you're getting more of mid-year teenagers and young adult women who, for drugs, will be sex trafficked.
Sure.
So they said it it makes people think that that's not as big a deal. I disagree with that analysis, but I thought it was a great movie, and it keeping in mind it's in a foreign country.
Yeah.
I don't know if those things happen here, but they certainly could.
They're happening.
Yeah.
I understand the premise of the movie, and those things are certainly happening here. I would also disagree. It doesn't diminish because both things are true.
Yeah.
Two things can be true at once, and we have to combat both of those things. And internationally, that stuff is pouring in through our borders anyway.
Yep.
And so we have to address what's happening internationally because it's going to end up happening here.
Even some of the high-profile sex cases where
Yeah.
they were transporting people to have sex with children in other countries or
Yes.
offshore. It's a big deal, and so I thought that was a great movie and really opened people's eyes toward that kidnapping, sex trafficking industry in Central America.
I think one of the, domestically inside the United States, one of the things that they talk about too are major events. So like anytime you have a big sporting event,
Super Bowl,
Super Bowl,
Nebraska football games.
Well, I mean,
Berkshire Hathaway.
Yep.
Yeah, and
College World Series.
Not that any one of those entities are certainly not endorsing that, but it's anytime you get a large group of people that are drawn to some sort of entertainment event, sometimes some of these, darker things come with it. So
yeah, and I agree with that. But one thing I caution everybody is you're hearing about it because it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The College World Series is a big deal. And it's a platform to talk about human trafficking, which is great. But the one thing I caution everybody is like that's happening every day. Like in our community.
Yeah.
It gets all this notice and attention why not? Because we have this platform, why not use it to talk about it, which is great. But I think sometimes people walk away with like, okay, the College World Series is done, so now I don't have to worry about my daughter. And it's like, that is not the case. So I just always want to caution people like, yes, it does happen then, but I'm telling you, I'm busy, and I'm busy in all the months outside
that's a good point.
Outside of College World Series.
There was a number, I think it was Creighton that was doing the analysis of dating service phone numbers and the propensity for them in Lincoln, Omaha, Grand Island, Kearney, I think even, and you could pinpoint towards special events like Nebraska football games, like Berkshire Hathaway, College World Series, other events across the state where those dating sites really get hit a lot, and many of those women are sex trafficked.
And that's that brings me to a point that I feel passionately about is that's demand. I mean, you can't deny when you have these events that it happens more because the demand is more.
Right.
There's more
Absolutely.
people per capita than there normally is. And state statute for purchasing sex in the state of Nebraska is a misdemeanor. And that commercial sex buyer who's showing up at that hotel has no way of knowing if this is consensual for this girl or not. There's no way you can know. You go in there, you pay your money, you get the sex act, and you leave. You don't know what's happening to that girl. You don't know where that money's going.
What's the federal penalties for
purchasing?
Yes.
The federal penalty, we don't normally prosecute commercial sex buyers unless it's with a juvenile. And there's a caveat, which the state statute doesn't have, but the federal statute says that the person in the commercial sex, the criminal involved, has to have a reasonable time to observe the minor, which we can get over that hump, and we do it all the time, but especially for traffickers.
Okay,
What do you mean
elaborate.
reasonable?
Elaborate on that.
Well, the case law has said if you've seen the person naked, but we all know how juries are. And juries do get hung up if a commercial sex buyer saw a girl for oral sex for 10 minutes. And it's like, did that commercial sex buyer have a reasonable time to observe the child, to identify that she was a minor?
Okay, gotcha.
So we have that hump. So we really don't prosecute federally commercial sex buyers, at all. We haven't yet in the last 4 years. We have not. We do. I have had state cases where we will do it, but...
Well, with supply and demand, there's a lot of demand, and if you don't do anything about the demand, it's not going to slow it down.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, Visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
I guess I look at that. I mean, that's a big part of the reason we do this show, because we're trying to educate people on what we're dealing with in public safety, and sometimes you don't have maybe all the pieces that you wish you had, and sometimes there's people in the public that throw their hands up in the air and say, well, why didn't anybody do anything? And we just want to, I guess, illuminate that a little bit so that people can kind of see what the situation on the ground is. And so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, now with the telephones too, and I think a lot of parents are getting shocked of what their kids are doing, what they're sending, and their conversations and who they're meeting up with and all that. And that's horrifying.
What I tell parents, and I'm a parent myself, I'm not to the point where I have to worry about that. But the question is, you have a 13-year-old girl. She's your daughter. Are you going to let her go out into the world with people you don't know, talk with people you don't know, go to places you've never been? And the answer every parent says, they say, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. I said, when you give them that phone, that's what they're doing. I mean, you can put up privacy settings and everything, but kids are smart. Like, they're resourceful now.
Yeah.
They know they can get a VPN. They know they can get around that stuff. And so that's what I always encourage parents is, like, you would never let your 13-year-old daughter just go out into the world. But when you hand her that phone, that's exactly what you're doing.
And there's a lot of predators out there.
Oh,
it's so scary.
I've had two traffickers that I've interviewed, and they've both told me in Mirandized interviews that they scour social media to look for vulnerabilities of girls. Mm-hmm. And then when they see a vulnerability, which they say, oh, they need money, or they're dressing scandalously, or they crave attention, they told me that is their strategy. They are using social media to seek that out, that loneliness, and they're befriending, they become the confidant, and that's how it starts. Yeah. Now, the caveat being that does happen, but a lot of the times people are being trafficked by people they know that they already
or that they trust.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's all sorts of avenues that criminals are going to exploit to try to gain this. And the reason is the commodity, the child or the adult victim who's being sold, they can resell her 10 times a day. When you're selling drugs,
right?
Yeah.
You have to run out and re-up, and the risk becomes more and more and more. And the penalties for sex trafficking, not that long ago, was like a slap on the wrist. Mm-hmm. It was no big deal. Now we've made leaps and bounds as far as the sentencings, and state side and federal side, prosecutors are taking these cases to trial, and we're getting really good sentences, which hopefully can be a deterrent, at least to the trafficker.
So we talked enough about what the bad guys do. Let's switch to the good guys.
Yeah.
So what things are being done? You mentioned you're busy with this stuff every day. So what are some of the things that are being done to combat human trafficking?
Well, we as law enforcement are doing it different than we did.
Yeah.
And one of that is like understanding trauma, understanding, like we've already kind of talked about. You can't just walk up and say to a child of trauma who's being trafficked, "Are you being sold for sex?" The answer is going to be no. I don't trust you. I don't know you. So understanding, we have to put some time into these relationships that maybe we weren't before.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot of that. We're obviously we're leveraging our relationships with NGOs, non-government organizations, to better support at-risk youth, like Brave Bee here in Lancaster County. We kind of talked a little bit about the sentences. We're understanding how better to present this evidence to a jury, which is always a challenge, and helping them understand, just like right now, educating the public. So we're really doing that a good job. Outreach to the public with a clear picture of what trafficking is, because we used to make it always seem like they're bound, there's duct tape, they're in chains.
It's kind of invisible chains.
Yes, that happens, but that's not what it normally looks like.
Yeah.
And so we did kind of a bad job presenting that to the public, because they're like, oh, well, this seems weird, but that's not what I saw on that poster in that truck stop. So that's not it.
Yeah.
So we're doing a better job nationwide and here in Nebraska of like a clear message to the public about what trafficking is. And then we're taking a more proactive approach, which is like, instead of waiting for the crime to happen, we realize like, okay, these girls are at risk, certainly at-risk youth, but also at risk to be trafficked. Let's try to intervene before we end up there. We look at those risk factors that we talked about, the economics, how many runaways that they've had, prior sexual abuse or child abuse intakes, and we leverage that, getting them set up in the community and trying to steer them in a way that they're not going to be as vulnerable.
Yeah, the first time you talk to them may not do it. It may not be the second or the third, but you got to keep trying, and eventually that you do. You build that rapport with them, and something will happen to them that will finally make them break that cycle and go get help and go do what needs to be done to get their life back.
100%. And when you think about the time that takes, you're talking about one victim, and you're right. Never have I gotten a disclosure on the first time because they don't know me from Adam. I could be just like the trafficker for all they know. But you add that to maybe I have 40 victims and I have to maintain that relationship. So those partnerships with that NGOs to help alleviate that off law enforcement.
Yeah.
And that's huge. So I think we're doing a really good job at that. And
what about the public? Is there anything specifically that the public can be doing to help law enforcement?
If it don't look right, say something. I mean, that is so huge.
That's it. People, I think that's it in all facets of the criminal cases. Yep. If something in your gut is like, this looks weird, even if you're like, people might judge me if I call this in, or they might say that I'm a certain type of person.
A busybody.
I don't care. Because maybe that means nothing to us now, but maybe in 2 years, that tip could change the whole case. So it's just calling it in. We'll have hotel staff. We're getting really good at educating hotel staff because a lot of trafficking does occur at lower end hotel motels. And there are, I don't want to call anyone out, but nice hotels in Omaha or in Lincoln. The trafficking's happening there too. But we're seeing a lot of it at the lower end motel hotels. And so being aware of like, this just looks odd. Why are you paying in cash? Why are you paying day to day? Look at this age gap. Like, and this relationship seems weird. You know, this minor has maybe things she shouldn't have access to. Just be vigilant and report everything. That's just the call to action.
You know, see something, say something.
Yeah. You know, when we get calls from citizens, I hate to bother you. I know you're busy. You know, and no, we need to know. We want to know this. We need to know this. It will help us. So
your tip could change everything.
That's right.
Well,
it could change everything.
Yeah, I just saw this strange car and I wrote the plate down and I don't know if it's anything. And all of a sudden, that's the tip that busts the whole thing open.
Just tell us, and you let us worry about how busy we are. You, as the community and the citizens, you call in everything, and we, like I said, maybe we look at it now and we're like, oh, that doesn't mean anything. But then in 5 days, you find something, a crime that occurred in that area, and like all of a sudden, that tip just became incredibly important. No. So the call to action is that. And then I always just philanthropic to the NGOs that are assisting us with this. We literally couldn't do without them. So another call to action is if you have the resources or the time, the volunteerism to give to these organizations who are trying really hard
to do the work. Good segue with the, kind of see something, say something mantra. I want to talk a little bit now about just the Department of Homeland Security and HSI generally. So what is the mission of your organization?
Well, Homeland Security is huge. People haven't heard of us very much because
newer.
We're new. Since just 2001, we were created after 9/11 happened. Yep. Right. So we're kind of new in our agency. The thing about us is our breadth is international. We have offices all over the world. I was just in Vietnam working on some human trafficking stuff over there. And we're here to protect the people of the United States. That is our goal. And to protect us from crimes nationally and internationally, and they all intertwine. And so I always tell people we're just like the FBI, we're just newer. And there's some nuances that are a little bit different as far as what they investigate and what we investigate. But for the most part, when you think of them, that's exactly who we are. And we have a wide breadth of the investigations that we can do. I mean, anything that touches our borders, anything that touches online, that all is within our breadth.
Well, we have a great relationship with HSI, and that's in our criminal interdiction unit.
Yes.
And that's a lot different than what you're doing on yours. I mean, it's all crime and things, but you have a big sweep of different things.
Yeah, large breadth.
Yeah. And then the border control.
Yes. Yep. And I was down at the border not long ago, and all the crime that comes in or out, like we as Homeland Security take that very seriously and are responsible for holding criminals accountable, whether within our nation's borders or outside.
So like a lot of federal agencies, and I think we work pretty closely with you because state and local, I think state and local efforts are kind of a large part of how you guys get your mission done. Because even though it's a big organization, there's not enough of you to do everything.
No, certainly not. And I think it's always unique when you go to a federal agency after you've been a local before, because I remember days when Ben was my captain, and I would leave with like 40 follow-ups on like a Friday, and it would be like a rough weekend, and I would come in on Monday, and it would be like 55. And I'm aware, in HSI, who hires mostly locals for the most part, like previous law enforcement, locals, state partners, we don't have that same problem because we really can get involved in cases that we want. There's not a lot of people calling us to report crime. And so that ability to merge yourself with the locals and assist in cases where it's like my hands are completely full and I need help, and it's like we're going to jump in and we're going to work those cases together. I think that really, to me, defines what HSI is as a federal partner.
Well, that, and when it starts to go across state borders and even national borders, that's where your guys' hand of being able to reach out and have more resources and have the connections. So, you know, somebody in California you can call real quick and say, hey, here's what we got. This is what's going on. Can you help us? And I think that is what's so big with the relationship with federal agencies.
And it's like, although I say it's like a big agency, like I'm pretty sure I could come up with about a good agent in every state that I know or have been to training with or have done a favor for. And that is because sometimes you're just cold calling an agency. You're like, hey, I need this help. You don't know if they're understaffed. You don't know what they have going on.
Right.
But if you get like Houchin said, if you can call someone that you know is going to do the follow-up and do the work, it can make a really big difference in a case.
Yep. And the thing I've always said, game time's not the time to meet each other.
No.
And those
it's all about relationships.
Yes, it is. It definitely is.
Speaking of the people at Department of Homeland Security, you're a special agent, and there's lots of special agents, but
very special agents.
There you go.
You guys are so supportive.
We're getting to the hiring plug. We're trying to bring you back.
Anyway, don't ever quit trying.
What other kind of staff positions do you have at your office specifically and across the department?
Yeah, so we have special agents, which makes up a large majority of our force, but then we have analysts who are integral. I think you guys just hired an analyst recently within the last 2 years.
Game changer.
Game changer. The amount of rabbit holing an analyst can do and their access to tools and stuff that, first of all, if I have to put a password in for all these things and carry cases,
it ain't going to happen.
It ain't happening. I'm telling you right now. So having that analyst there to do that is humongous. So they are phenomenal. Computer forensic agents, or they're called CFAs. They do all of our forensic work. When I talk about traffickers, a lot of the communication with their victims is happening on their phones. And so being able to get into those devices and show that evidence so we can alleviate some of that pressure on the victims and we can just show the jury. She doesn't have to tell you what happened because I'm going to show you from the target's phone. That's huge. So we have CFAs. We have technical enforcement officers who handle like all of our wiring of UC vehicles, UC undercovers, our undercover wiring, confidential informants, poll cameras, things like that. They handle all of that stuff, and that also is huge for us. And forensic interviewers, like Brave Bee has, as well as victim advocates, makes up a majority of what we have going on.
So just if you want to get involved with a career at Homeland Security, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you don't have to be the one in the field doing all the stuff.
No.
There's lots of other ways to serve.
Yes.
And, we try to do a hiring plug for people to come on the show. So if you're interested in Homeland Security positions, you can go to dhs.gov/HSI/careers/apply. And, that's the direct way to get to the hiring thing. But I'm sure if you make it to dhs.gov, there's probably a way to hunt around and click around and find it. But
or you can go to lancaster.ne.gov.
Joinlso.com would also, we'll talk to you about it.
Okay.
Well, a little bit of like a hiring plug is I truly believe, and I've told all of you this, that I would never have ended up at Homeland Security Investigations had I not worked here at Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. First of all, my training officers that I had Mayo, Hinkle, and Reha. You want to talk about like a triple threat to make a good cop. Yeah. I mean, having them just from the very beginning was huge, and then the training opportunities that Lancaster County can do for their employees to make you better and better understand what you have going on your cases and better interviewer and all these things. I truly do believe I never would have ended up as a federal agent had I not worked here.
Well, we're lucky too. We have a lot of ways for people to go with their interest. Like you said, your VAWA, your criminal interdiction, your gang. We're gonna start being in a gang unit with the LPD and the FBI coming in, and it's just nice that each deputy has a chance to look and see. What am I interested in? What would I like to get my training in, and how can I further my career? And like you said, you were pretty young when you went into VAWA and did all that. And
the VAWA is Violence Against Women Act. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And
it was only 3 years. 3 years in.
And getting into that, and I know you learned a lot real quick just because it's sink or swim, because you got a lot coming at you.
Yeah, it's busy. And that is the opportunity that Lancaster County is going to give you. And a lot of the other agencies, especially locals, their investigative positions a lot of them are all permanent, which really makes it hard at those agencies specifically to get to learn those things early in your career. And that is something here that Lancaster's done a really great job at.
That's something we've always struggled with,
it's
too,
hard.
because you get somebody that excels in there and you'd like to keep them there, but that just denies somebody else an opportunity, and who's to say whether they'll excel or not, and they probably will.
It's really hard. Yeah. It's a hard
decision.
decision.
And we've lost a lot of people in our investigations unit because of the expertise they developed, like you and Korea.
Right.
Then they go on to other agencies, and you certainly can't fault anybody for improving on their personal
and I think
professional life.
It's a thing for you to brag about, to be able to say, we're not losing people. We're losing them. They're stepping up and going to the feds and doing some of that. And I think that's a great feather in your hat. And a lot of these people we do lose are moving on to promotions and doing things up. Yeah. And I think that is such
Department
a cool
of State.
thing.
And I think for everyone who left that I know of, at least who went federally, it was not an easy decision. I mean, it should be, because the money that they give you and the benefits is just a part of being a federal employee.
That kind of overcomes working for a great boss, right?
It does. Yeah, okay. Just barely, though. But it was not an easy decision. And I think that says a lot, because there's people that they are happy to leave their last agency like in the dust. Yeah. And I just have never wanted that. And I've kept all my relationships here, and I think that it's really important, and it's something you guys are very good at.
Well, we appreciate you saying so. I'll bring this in for a landing a little bit, but just before we close, how would you say the Department of Homeland Security makes Lancaster County and really the rest of the U.S. a safer place?
Well, we're looking at trends internationally, and we're leveraging our vast breadth of criminal investigation and where people are to understand what's happening abroad and how that's going to affect us here at home. And what's happening here in Nebraska is happening in New York, and it's happening in California. Mm-hmm. And if we can learn before that trend makes it to us, because it doesn't normally start in Nebraska, everything, just like fashion, starts on the coast and we're the last one. It's the same. And so if we can keep that connection and leverage those opportunities to keep people safe here in Lancaster County, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Closing thoughts.
Thanks for having me. It's
Anything
been fun.
Else?
Yeah, we miss her.
Yeah.
I really miss you guys.
Yeah.
I miss it here.
We won't completely hold it against you too
it's
bad.
okay.
So.
You can hate me a little.
Well, the good thing is you did get to come back, and you were close, and you're certainly not a stranger here at all. And we've worked cases here and did some stuff.
And she picked up the phone when I called her about this. So
of course.
I appreciate it.
And I'll always pick up the phone whenever you guys call.
Well, Special Agent Christina Worcester, we just thank you for being here with us, and just thanks for all the work that you do and how you partner with us and state and locals all across the Midwest, across the country, and it means a lot to the victims that are out there that don't maybe can't always have a voice for themselves. That they've got people out there fighting for them like you.
Happy to.
Awesome. Thanks.
Good job. Thanks.
That is all the time that we have for today's episode of the 902 podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts so you can catch all of the episodes of the 902 podcast as they're released, or go back and listen to some of our old ones. Be sure to check us out on social media. The Lancaster County Sheriff's Office is at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, TikTok, and we're also now on LinkedIn, so be sure to check us out on there. If you have questions about career opportunities at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, you can find us at www.joinlso.com. And lastly, if you have a question that you'd like to submit via email, you can reach out to us, lso@lancaster.ne.gov. Thanks for listening.